I've always been told I looked like autumn personified, warm, bronze skin that rivals the turning leaves, strong features that belonged more to classical sculptures than to women. My name is Eleanor, and at 25, I should have been living my best years. Instead, I found myself trapped in a marriage that felt more like a beautifully decorated prison. The arrangement had been made when I was 22. My parents, desperate to secure business connections with the influential Sterling family, offered me up like a bargaining chip. Robert Sterling was everything society deemed perfect: successful, handsome, charismatic. What they didn't know, what I didn't know until it was too late, was that his heart had never been mine to claim. I remember our wedding day vividly. The garden was filled with sunflowers, their vibrant faces almost mocking in their cheerfulness. Robert stood at the arbor in his impeccable suit, but his eyes weren't on me as I walked down the aisle. They were fixed on my older sister, Clara, standing among the bridesmaids, wearing an expression I couldn't quite read at the time. Those first years of marriage were a study in loneliness. Robert was never cruel then, just absent, emotionally, physically, in every way that mattered. I threw myself into supporting his career, managing our household, attending endless social functions with a smile plastered on my face. When his business ventures failed, I was there. When he faced bankruptcy, I used my own inheritance to keep him afloat. When the world turned its back on him, I remained steadfast. "Eleanor, I need another loan," Robert would say, barely looking up from his papers. "Of course," I'd reply, signing away another piece of my family's legacy without hesitation. "You're so understanding," he'd mutter, but there was never warmth in those words, just acknowledgement of a useful tool. I told myself that love would grow, that dedication and sacrifice would eventually be rewarded. I was such a fool. Everything changed when Robert's company finally took off. The risky venture I'd funded with the last of my inheritance became a massive success. Suddenly, Robert was everywhere: magazine covers, business conferences, charity galas. The man who had once needed me was now the man everyone wanted. And with success came his true colors. "You're an embarrassment," Robert told me one evening after a gala. We were alone in our bedroom, and he didn't even bother to lower his voice. "Standing there with your earthy, rustic look, people were asking if you were unwell. Do you know how that reflects on me?" I stood frozen, still wearing the expensive gown I'd carefully selected. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "You never mean to do anything," he cut me off sharply. "You just exist, draining the vibrancy from every room you enter." These verbal assaults became routine. Each day brought new criticisms, new ways he found me lacking. But the worst was yet to come. I'll never forget the day I discovered the affair. I'd come home early from a charity meeting, eager to surprise Robert with his favorite dinner. The sounds coming from our bedroom told a story I'd been blind to for years. When I pushed open the door, I found Robert entangled with my sister, Clara. They didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. "Eleanor," Clara said, actually smiling as she adjusted her clothes. "Finally figured it out, have you?" Robert laughed, actually laughed. "Don't look so shocked. Did you really think I married you for love? It was always about Clara. You were just convenient." The room spun. "But everything you did for me was expected," Robert interrupted coldly. "You played your part perfectly, the devoted spouse, the endless well of resources. But now that I don't need your money anymore, what exactly is your purpose?" From that day forward, my life became a waking nightmare. Robert and Clara didn't hide their relationship. They flaunted it. They'd mock me at dinner parties, make cruel jokes about my appearance, whisper loud enough for me to hear about how pathetic I was. "Poor Eleanor," Clara would say, dripping with false sympathy. still clinging to a marriage that was dead before it began. She's like a fading photograph, haunting our lives with her dated, pitiful presence. I endured because I had nowhere else to go. My parents had passed away years ago. My inheritance was gone, invested in Robert's success. My friends had slowly disappeared, alienated by Robert's subtle manipulations. I was truly alone. 6 months after discovering their affair, my health began to deteriorate rapidly. At first, I thought it was stress, the constant anxiety, the verbal abuse, the humiliation. But as weeks passed, I grew weaker. Food tasted strange. I developed severe stomach pains. I could barely get out of bed some mornings. "You're being dramatic," Robert said when I mentioned seeing a doctor, always seeking attention. But I knew something was deeply wrong. My warm skin became sallow, my strong features gaunt. I looked like death itself. One evening, as I lay in bed, too weak to move, Robert and Clara entered my room together. There was something in their expressions, a mixture of anticipation and cold satisfaction that made my blood run cold. "Eleanor," Robert began, sitting on the edge of the bed, "we need to talk." Clara stood behind him, arms crossed, wearing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We've been poisoning you," Robert continued casually, as if discussing the weather. "Small doses in your food, your drinks, nothing too obvious, nothing that would raise suspicions, just enough to slowly shut down your organs." The words didn't register at first. My brain couldn't process such calculated cruelty. "Why?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Because you're in the way," Clara answered, leaning forward. "Robert and I want to be together openly, but a divorce would be messy, bad for Robert's image, might affect the company stock. Your death, however tragic and unfortunate, would make Robert a sympathetic widower." Robert nodded, actually looking pleased with himself. "Plus, there's the matter of your trust fund, the one that reverts to your spouse upon your death. That'll be quite useful." I wanted to scream, to fight, to do something, but my body was failing. Each breath was agony. "Did you ever love me?" I asked Robert, knowing the answer, but needing to hear it. "Love you?" Robert laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Eleanor, I've never even liked you. You were a means to an end. Your family's money, your connections, your pathetic devotion, all tools I used to build my empire. But you were always just a fading memory I had to tolerate." "We actually started planning this years ago," Clara added, her voice filled with pride, "even before the wedding. Robert and I fell in love in college, but your family had more money, better connections, so we devised a plan. He'd marry you, use your resources, and once he was successful enough, we'd eliminate you and be together." "You were surprisingly easy to manipulate," Robert continued. "So desperate for approval, for love. You gave me everything I asked for without question. It would be admirable if it wasn't so pathetic." As they spoke, I felt my consciousness slipping. This was it, the end. Years of dedication, sacrifice, and love, all for nothing. I was going to die at the hands of the two people I should have been able to trust most. "Any last words?" Clara asked mockingly. With my final breaths, I managed to speak, my voice stronger than it had been in weeks. "If I get another chance, if fate gives me one more opportunity, I will make you both pay. You'll experience every pain you've inflicted on me, every humiliation, every betrayal. This I swear." They laughed as darkness claimed me. The last thing I heard was Robert saying, "Empty threats from a dead woman. How typical." I opened my eyes to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming, or that this was some strange afterlife, but the sensations were too real. The soft sheets beneath me, the sound of birds chirping outside, the faint scent of coffee. I sat up quickly, gasping, my hands flying to my stomach, where the pain had been unbearable just moments. Or was it years ago? Nothing. No pain, no nausea. I looked at my hands, turning them over. They were smooth, healthy, unmistakably mine, but somehow different. Racing to the mirror, I stared at my reflection. It was me, the warm skin, the strong features, but younger, healthier. I looked exactly as I had on my 22nd birthday, before the wedding, before everything went wrong. This can't be real, I whispered to my reflection. But it was. Somehow, impossibly, I'd been given a second chance. I'd been reborn, sent back to the moment before my life became a nightmare. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Checking the date confirmed my suspicions. I was exactly 1 week before my wedding to Robert. 7 days to change everything. The euphoria was overwhelming. I could fix this. I could avoid the marriage, expose Robert and Clara, protect myself. But as I sat on the edge of the bed, a darker thought crept in. Why should I simply avoid them? They had planned my murder for years, used me, destroyed me. They deserved more than just losing their scheme. They deserved to suffer. A knock on my door interrupted my thoughts. "Eleanor, are you awake? We need to discuss the final wedding arrangements." My mother's voice. My mother, who I'd lost years ago to illness. Hearing her again brought tears to my eyes. "I'll be right there, Mom," I called back, my voice steady despite my emotions. As I dressed, a plan began forming in my mind, but I would need help, resources, information. I couldn't do this alone. That's when I remembered Julian. Julian Blackwood had always existed on the periphery of my previous life. A wealthy businessman, a few years older than I was. He attended the same social functions I did. We'd exchange politities, nothing more. I'd been so focused on Robert that I'd never really noticed him. But in my previous timeline, after my death, I'd heard rumors, whispered conversations at my own funeral that I'd somehow been aware of in my dying moments. Julian had been there, standing apart from the others, and I'd heard someone mention that he'd had feelings for me, that he'd watched from afar but never approached because I was engaged to Robert. Now, with this knowledge and a second chance, I saw Julian differently. If he'd cared for me once, perhaps he could be persuaded to help me now. And from what I remembered, his resources were vast, possibly even greater than Robert's current success. I found him 3 days later at a charity art auction. He stood alone, examining a painting with genuine interest rather than the affected appreciation most attendees displayed. Even from across the room, I could see why I'd overlooked him before. He didn't demand attention like Robert did. His power was quieter, more refined. "That's a Rothko," I said, approaching him. "Color field movement. Bold but contemplative." Julian turned, and I saw surprise flicker across his handsome features. Up close, he was striking. Sharp jawline, intelligent gray eyes, an air of controlled intensity. "Eleanor," he said, and there was something in the way he spoke my name that confirmed the rumors. "I didn't expect you to approach me." "There's a lot I'm doing differently this time," I replied cryptically. His eyebrow raised. "This time?" I made a decision in that moment. A reckless one, perhaps, but I was done being careful. "Is there somewhere we can talk privately?" Julian studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Follow me." He led me to a private viewing room the auction house reserved for serious buyers. Once the door closed behind us, I took a deep breath. "I need your help," I began. "And before you ask why you should help me, I should tell you that I know you have feelings for me, or at least you will, or you did. Time is complicated." Julian's expression remained neutral, but I saw his jaw tighten slightly. "That's quite an assumption." "It's not an assumption. It's knowledge I shouldn't have, but do." I moved closer to him. "In another life, my previous life, I married Robert Sterling, It was arranged by my parents. That marriage destroyed me, slowly and deliberately, until Robert and my sister Clara literally poisoned me to death. That's impossible, Julian said, but his tone was uncertain. Is it? Look at me, Julian. Really look at me. Something's different, isn't it? I'm standing here 1 week before a wedding I haven't canceled yet, talking to you like I've known you for years, when we've barely spoken before. Julian stared at me intensely, and I saw the moment belief entered his eyes. Assuming this is true, and I'm not saying I believe you, what do you want from me? Revenge, I said simply. Robert and Clara plan to use me, destroy me, and profit from my death. They need to pay for what they did, what they will do if I don't stop them. But I can't do it alone. I need resources, connections, someone who understands the world of business and power. And you think I'll help you because of supposed feelings I have for you? I stepped even closer, close enough to see the flecks of silver in his gray eyes. I think you'll help me because you're curious, because something in you recognizes the truth in what I'm saying. And yes, because you care about me, even if you've never acted on it. The tension between us was electric. Julian reached out, his fingers barely brushing my cheek. You really are different. The Eleanor I knew was softer, more fragile. That Eleanor died, I said quietly. I came back harder. And what's in this for me? Julian asked, his hand still hovering near my face. I met his gaze directly. What do you want? You, he said without hesitation, but not as some grateful recipient of my help, not as someone using me the way Robert used you. Then how? Julian's hand finally made full contact with my cheek, his thumb tracing my jawline. As an equal. As someone who chooses to be with me because they want to, not because they need to. Can you offer me that? My heart was racing. This wasn't part of my plan, but somehow it felt right. I don't know what I can offer you yet, Julian. I'm still figuring out who I am now, but I can promise you honesty. And if something develops between us, it will be real. That's enough, Julian said. And then he was kissing me. It wasn't gentle or hesitant. It was hungry, possessive, everything my marriage to Robert had never been. I responded in kind, my hands gripping his shoulders as he pulled me closer. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing heavily. So, Julian said, his voice rough, tell me everything about this revenge plan of yours. Over the following days, Julian and I met secretly, planning every detail. He was brilliant, seeing angles I'd missed, suggesting approaches I'd never considered. But more than that, we discovered a connection that went beyond our shared goal. Cancel the wedding, Julian advised during one of our meetings in his penthouse office. Don't give them any explanation. Just walk away. No, I said, studying the financial documents he'd gathered on Robert's company. That's too simple. They need to understand what they've lost, what they threw away. Julian smiled, a dark expression that sent shivers through me. I like the way you think. So, what's your plan? I go through with the wedding, but this time I'm not the devoted spouse. I'm distant, cold even. I'll refuse to provide any financial support. Let Robert struggle. Meanwhile, you and I will quietly start acquiring shares in his competitors, building alternative ventures. When he's desperate, when he thinks he has nowhere else to turn, then I'll offer to help, but with conditions that benefit me. And Clara, my expression hardened, my dear sister has always been jealous of me. Even though she hides it well, she wants what I have. The family company shares that will come to me, the respect our parents gave me. In the original timeline, she got everything after I died. This time, I'll make sure she gets nothing but humiliation. Julian stood, moving to where I sat, and pulled me to my feet. You're magnificent like this. Fierce, uncompromising. Is that what attracts you? My capacity for revenge? That's part of it, he admitted, his hands settling on my waist. But mostly it's seeing you value yourself, seeing you refuse to be a victim. Our relationship evolved quickly into something intense and complicated. We satisfied each other's darker desires, finding release and connection in ways that probably weren't entirely healthy, but felt necessary. Julian was possessive, but not controlling, passionate, but not suffocating. With him, I could be both vulnerable and strong. "Stay tonight," Julian would whisper after our encounters, and I always did, finding comfort in his arms that I'd never experienced with Robert. But we both knew this wasn't just physical. Something deeper was growing, something neither of us had expected. I went through with the wedding as planned, but everything was different. Where I'd once been nervous and hopeful, I was now cold and calculating. Robert noticed immediately. "You seem different," he said during our wedding reception, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Do I? Perhaps I am just tired." I caught him exchanging glances with Clara throughout the evening. They'd expected the same easy Mark, the same desperate-for-love Eleanor. They were confused by this new version. That night in our bedroom, Robert attempted to kiss me. I turned my head. "I'm not interested," I said flatly. "Excuse me?" Robert looked genuinely shocked. "You heard me. This marriage is a business arrangement as far as I'm concerned. Don't expect anything beyond that." I watched anger flash across his face, followed by calculation. "Your parents arranged this expecting—" "My parents are pleased with the alliance. They didn't specify sleeping arrangements." I moved to the spare bedroom. "Good night, Robert." Over the following months, I systematically dismantled every expectation Robert had. When his business ventures began to struggle and he came to me for money, I refused. "But you're my spouse," he argued, his desperation showing. "What's mine is yours and vice versa." "Actually, we have a prenup, and I've decided to invest my money elsewhere. Julian Blackwood has some interesting opportunities that seem far more promising than your company." The mention of Julian's name made Robert's jaw clench. He'd heard the rumors by then, that I was spending significant time with Julian, that we were seen together frequently at business functions and private dinners. "Are you having an affair?" he demanded. "Would you care if I was?" I countered. "This marriage is meaningless to both of us. Let's not pretend otherwise." What Robert didn't know was that Julian and I had been strategically acquiring shares in his company through shell corporations. We were slowly gaining control while Robert hemorrhaged money trying to maintain appearances. Meanwhile, Clara tried a different approach. "Eleanor, can we talk?" she asked one day, cornering me at a family gathering. "About what, sister?" "You've changed. Everyone's noticed. I'm worried about you." I laughed, a harsh sound that made her flinch. "Worried? That's touching, Clara. Tell me, are you worried I might see through your schemes? Worried I might discover what you're really after?" Her face paled. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't you?" I leaned closer, lowering my voice. "I know about you and Robert. I know everything, and I'm going to take everything from both of you, piece by piece, until you have nothing left but each other's company. And let's see how long your love lasts when you're both broke and disgraced." As my revenge plans progressed, something unexpected happened. Julian and I fell genuinely in love. It wasn't the desperate, needy love I'd felt for Robert. It was something deeper, more solid, built on honesty, mutual respect, and a shared darkness we both acknowledged and accepted in each other. "I never expected this," Julian admitted one night, as we lay in his bed, my head on his chest. "I thought I'd help you get revenge, maybe have an affair, then we'd part ways." "And now?" I asked, tracing patterns on his skin. "Now, I can't imagine my life without you in it." He tilted my chin up to look at him. "I love you, Eleanor. The real you. Both the soft parts you try to hide and the sharp edges you've developed."
"I love you too," I whispered, and meant it. I didn't think I could after everything, but you make me feel safe and dangerous at the same time. Julian kissed me deeply, and we made love. Not just satisfying desires this time, but connecting on every level. When he held me afterward, I felt tears slip down my cheeks. "What's wrong?" Julian asked gently, wiping them away. "Nothing's wrong. For the first time in 2 lifetimes, everything's right." It took 2 years, but Robert's company finally collapsed. The combination of his poor decisions, my refusal to help, and Julian's strategic market manipulations brought him to his knees. I'll never forget the day he came to me broken and desperate. "Please," Robert begged, actually getting on his knees in my office. "I'll lose everything, the house, the company, my reputation. Just help me this one time." "Like I helped you before?" I asked coldly. "When I gave you my entire inheritance? When I supported you through every failure? When I sacrificed everything for your success? That was different." "No, Robert, it wasn't. You took everything I offered and then planned to kill me for more. Did you really think I didn't know?" His face went white. "How? How did you—" How did I know? Let's just say I have excellent intuition, or maybe you and Clara weren't as subtle as you thought. I stood, looking down at him. "You wanted my death to benefit you. Instead, you'll live to see your own destruction. Every day you wake up knowing you had everything and lost it through your own greed and cruelty." "Clara told me it would work," Robert sobbed. "She said I was weak, that I'd never fight back." Clara was wrong. And speaking of my dear sister, her turn is coming. Clara's downfall was even sweeter. I worked with Julian to expose her embezzlement from our family company, something she'd been doing for years, assuming she'd inherit everything eventually. When the evidence came to light, our family's board of directors had no choice but to prosecute. I visited her in jail once. "You did this," Clara hissed through the glass partition. "You ruined me." "No, Clara, you ruined yourself. I just made sure you faced consequences for your actions." I leaned forward. "In another life, you and Clara poisoned me to death. You mocked me as I died. Did you really think there would be no reckoning?" "You're insane," she spat. "Maybe," I agreed pleasantly. "Or maybe I'm just someone who learned that being kind and forgiving only works when the other person has a conscience. You never did." 5 years after my rebirth, Julian and I stood on the balcony of our home, a beautiful estate we designed together. The company we built from scratch was thriving. Robert and Clara were both out of our lives, their power and influence gone. "Any regrets?" Julian asked, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "Not a single one," I said honestly. "Well, maybe one. I wish I hadn't wasted my first life on people who didn't deserve me. But then you might not have found your way to me." I turned in his arms, kissing him softly. "True. And you were worth the journey, even the dying part. Especially the dying part. It taught me that I'm stronger than I ever imagined, that I deserve to be loved, truly loved, not used." Julian pulled me closer. "And you are loved, completely, unconditionally, forever." Later that night, as we lay in bed, Julian asked, "Do you think about them, Robert and Clara?" "Sometimes," I admitted, "but not with anger anymore, more like curiosity. I wonder if they ever understood what they lost." "Does it matter?" "No, it doesn't. They're my past. You're my present and future." "Sentimental," Julian teased, but his eyes were warm. "Only with you," I replied. "To everyone else, I'm still the Autumn Queen." "My Autumn Queen," Julian corrected, and kissed me. As I drifted off to sleep that night, safe in Julian's arms, I thought about the promise I'd made as I died, to make them taste their own medicine. I kept that promise and then some, but more importantly, I'd found something I'd never had in my first life: genuine love, true partnership, and a happiness I'd earned through my own strength. The fading memory who'd been murdered and mocked was gone. In her place stood someone who knew her worth, who had fought for her happiness, and who had won. And if that wasn't the best revenge of all, I didn't know what was.